Hello Internet, I am Maya Todale. I am an autistic psychologist, and usually I would talk about autism, which is what I specialize in, but today we have to talk about Britney Spears and her conservatorship and disability rights. So it's a big topic and I won't be able to cover everything. I do have to state from the beginning that I am someone who has been a fan of Britney Spears for her entire career. And so I have possibly some more contextual knowledge because I did follow her career throughout. I remember when things happened and what order, and I've been sort of following along with the case. It does also mean that I'm biased in her favor. So do take that into account. Another thing is that I'm Danish. I'm not an American. I've never lived in America. I don't know the American court system very well, except for, sort of general knowledge. So those are just some quick disclaimers. Now, why do I even want to talk about Britney Spears? Well, obviously, since the Framing Britney Spears documentary, it's been kind of a hot topic. It's brought some things to the surface. I will say that I didn't really learn anything new from that documentary. I already knew about all of it, but it brought it back, shall we say. And I've been talking to some of my psychologist friends who did not know the case beforehand, and we've had some discussions about disability rights following that documentary. And of course, we've had those discussions in the framework of the documentary being sort of a case study. So that's how I'm going to be talking about it today, is that we're talking about disability rights, but we're also talking about that specific case, Britney Spears' specific case, because it's kind of important. Now, conservatorships are a tricky topic. So there are diagnoses where you would use measures like a conservatorship and it would be warranted. These are often cases in which we're talking about elderly people with dementia or those types of illnesses that they get worse over time. This person is not going to get any better at handling their own affairs. They're only going to get worse until they die. So those are cases where conservatorships are used, and the idea is that because you sign away their rights and you sign them over to another person, often a family member, you're doing it to protect them. You're doing it to protect them from being tricked into giving away their money or being tricked into taking some medication that they shouldn't be taking because someone told them that it was a good idea, and they're not capable of really evaluating such things, and protecting them from undue influence and such things. Yeah. The point is that they are there because we want to protect people who can't protect themselves. However, they are misused sometimes. There are accusations out there that, the lawyers or the banks or the family members that are put in charge of that person's finances are stealing the money, are using them on things that they shouldn't be. And there are also cases where people who are under a conservatorship, because they don't have personal rights anymore, are much more vulnerable to abuse. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, you name it. So those are worries, and that is really where some of my concerns come in, is that when we sign away someone's rights, and it's often permanent, we do hear in the documentary a lawyer state that in the cases that she's worked on, she's never seen a conservatee actually end that conservatorship successfully. And I'm not surprised by that. I think it's possibly worrying. I don't know. Because of the fact that conservatorships are so often used with people who do only get worse after their diagnosis, you would expect that it's very rare for a conservatorship to actually end. But because there is such a vulnerability to being abused, even by the people who are placed as your conservators, who are supposed to be caring for you, and who legally they have to have your best interests in mind when they act on your behalf. That's their job. That's what they're getting paid to do. But these people are so vulnerable that I do find it concerning that maybe we are not putting in enough effort to independently reevaluate conservatorships often enough to see if the money are being spent in a way that is reasonable, if the person is being taken care of, such things. But also, and this is where we come back to Britney Spears, is there may be cases where you need to reevaluate if the conservatorship needs to be in place. Now, going back to the general for just a moment, I want to talk about the stigma of mental illness, and this actually does relate back to Britney Spears, because what I've seen since the documentary is a lot of people posting comments like, well, she's bipolar, or yada yada yada, and if she's in a manic episode, then she's going to do all kinds of crazy things, or if she's depressive, then that could be really bad. And yes, those things are true, but people who have bipolar disorder are functional people for the most part. People who live in society, go about their lives, and yes, they get some medication to deal with this disorder that they have. Not all of them even need that, at which case you would probably question whether it's clinically significant anymore. But most people with bipolar disorder are perfectly functional members of society, and I think that the idea that your rights should be taken away from you because you are at risk of having a manic episode where you might make some bad choices, that's worrying to me that people would think in that way. So that is a point, and it goes into the general, because if you are making a judgment like that in the case of someone like Britney Spears, who has been working, she was placed under this conservatorship in 2008. So she has been working, releasing albums, doing concerts, she's done sponsorship deals, all of these things. For those 12 years, she has worked, and worked probably harder than a lot of people would think. If you think that someone like that should have her rights taken away because she has possibly a bipolar disorder, we don't know that. No one has ever confirmed what diagnosis she's been given. Those documents are sealed. Nobody knows. But if you think that about someone who is very clearly capable of working and, having the sort of economy that she can produce, then what do you think about your average person with bipolar disorder? What do you think about your average autistic person? There are a lot of mental illnesses or disabilities where I do think that we have to reconsider how we as a society think about people who have disabilities or who have mental illnesses, and when it is okay to force help on someone. Obviously, when you're put under a conservatorship, the courts have, evaluations done, and there are professionals that state their opinions on, what sort of help this person might need. And I'm not here to question this specific evaluation that was made of Britney. What I'm saying is that in general, I'm not sure that there is enough independent evaluation done following the implementation of a conservatorship. For example, after 2 years or 5 years, it's possible that it should be reevaluated. I'm not saying that it should be easy to get out of a conservatorship, because it's also possible that you have an illness that means that you are so far removed from reality that you may say or do things to get you out of the conservatorship, but then not be able to function. There will be cases where a person may seem functional but not actually be functional. That's possible. But I do think that it's important to reevaluate the decisions that we're making, because we are talking about taking away a person's civil liberties and legal rights. This is a really severe thing to do to a person. It's not something that should be taken lightly, and my gosh, it's so important that we, as a society and as people who work with mental illness, both in my profession but also in the court system, that we really seriously check ourselves before we make decisions that would take away someone's rights. I think it's so important. Now, going back to Britney Spears, there are some points that are really concerning to me, because when this conservatorship was put in place, obviously she'd been going through a rough time. Her mother believes that she was suffering from postpartum depression. She had 2 very small children. She was being hounded by paparazzi. It was a really serious, vulnerable situation that she was in. She was placed under a temporary conservatorship. Then that was made permanent, and it's been in place ever since. There are details regarding, at some point she stated that her father had threatened her. There's a voicemail out there somewhere. There are some court documents that mention dementia, but I'm not sure if they're actually claiming that she has dementia or if it's because of some legal code that they're trying to use. I'm not a lawyer. I don't read court documents. I'm not going to make any statements towards that. I will say that it is very unlikely that she has dementia. I don't believe that. It's possible that she's bipolar. It's very possible that she had a postpartum depression. But she was placed under this conservatorship. It's still in place. She does not have the right to sign contracts for herself. She does not have the right to control her own money. She does not have the right to control who she sees or when. She has no rights, really, that I can think of, based on everything that we know about this conservatorship. Ethical concerns. My primary concern when it comes to Britney's conservatorship is kind of twofold. So there is the hypothetical scenario in which she is incapable of making good choices for herself. She is incapable of taking care of herself. She needs to be under a conservatorship. That's the one hypothetical scenario. The other hypothetical scenario is one in which she was temporarily incapable. She was placed under a conservatorship. She does not need to be under a conservatorship anymore. Both cases are disturbing, to say the least. But we'll take them one at a time. So if we start with the one where she should no longer be under a conservatorship because she is actually capable, in that case, we have a very serious case of conservatorship abuse on our hands, one in which she has been made to work, and work in very particular ways. She has released albums, she's done concerts, she's done all of these things. She's not able to sign those contracts for herself. Her father and her lawyers are signing those contracts. It's not her choice. If she is capable of making her own choices, then she has still been put under those contracts and she has still done all of that work while she does not have financial control of the money she's actually making. So, I'm not a lawyer, but this sounds like slavery to me. Tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like no matter what sort of gilded castle she's living in, and I have seen court documents that say that she has a $1,500 a week allowance that she's able to spend. But, you know, we're talking about a woman who has made a lot of money and she does not have any control of them. Her father does and her lawyers do, but she does not. So that's concerning to me. It's very concerning that she's not able to get out of that, and she has not been able to. I would be concerned about whether she has the rights to order an independent medical evaluation, psychological evaluation. I would be concerned about that because if she's not able to do that and have it presented to the court, then it can be very difficult for her to prove that she is capable so that she can get out of the conservatorship. I'm very concerned that this might actually be the case because she is able to do all of this work. She may still have support needs, and we do need to acknowledge that even if she is not disabled to the point where she needs to be in a conservatorship, she may still be disabled, she may still have support needs, but not support needs that rise to that level. And if her support needs do not rise to that level, then why is she under those circumstances? That's a concern. The other scenario is where things get possibly even scarier. And this is an ethical concern. It's not my belief that this is actually the truth of what is happening. Based on what she is able to do, she's able to do interviews, she's able to record music, she's able to perform, full concert shows, remember the choreography. She's able to do all of those things. I find it personally, I find it unlikely that she needs to be under a conservatorship, but more than that, I find it unlikely that that she needs the degree of control that she is under. So this is a hypothetical. I don't believe necessarily that this is the truth, but this is a serious ethical concern that I don't see people talking about. If, hypothetical, that Britney is so incapable of making choices for herself, so incapable of taking care of herself, that she should be under a conservatorship and that she needs this degree of support and control around her person and her finances, if she needs that, then this is a case where a seriously disabled person is being signed into contracts where she is recording sexually explicit lyrics, sexually explicit music videos. She's being made to perform in garments, costumes that are very revealing and very sexual. And she is being made to perform as a functioning pop star, despite the fact that she is so severely disabled. That would be so concerning to me, and I do not understand why no one is pointing out the dichotomy, the issue of, her rights are signed away, but her conservators, who, according to the court, she needs, those conservators have the right to sign contracts where she has to work in this way for her entire adult life. And again, she does not have control of her finances. They do. So this would be a case, if this was the truth, this would be a case where a small group of people are making a woman, a disabled woman, work in sexually explicit and very public ways, in order to make money off of her. And if she needs to be under a conservatorship, if that is the case, then this is a gross violation of a person, not just their rights, but of the person. And I find it so disturbing to consider that there may be cases out there where a not Britney Spears, who is not in the public eye, who does not have the now very public scrutiny that this documentary has set in motion, there may be people out there who are exploited in such a way, and that we may never hear about because disability rights are not taken seriously at this time. And we know that they're not being taken seriously, and that they're only now being talked about because it's only now that Britney's case is even being brought up in the public eye. And she is a very famous conservatee. We have known about this throughout the entire process. And yes, the Free Britney movement has existed for all of this time, but there has not been this level of public scrutiny before. And I find it so disturbing that if the conservatorship is legitimately needed, that she has been exploited in the way that she has, and that other people who are not famous, not rich, whatever circumstances we're talking about, that they could be exploited in the same or much worse ways. So this is not me making any sort of judgment on what she should and should not have of support, or I'm not trying to make any sort of judgment on what diagnosis she does or does not have. I'm pretty sure that it's not dementia. I don't see how that would be possible. It just seems very unlikely. So that is one that, if she was diagnosed with dementia in 2008, that would be unlikely. But other than that, I'm really not trying to make any sort of judgment on her support needs or her diagnoses. These are just my thoughts on the general situation and on some of the disability rights issues that come along with that. So I hope that this was interesting, and I will be getting back to talking about autism next time. Hopefully, yes. So be well, everyone. Smile, it's contagious. Now that we can't hug each other, smiling is still really good. And even if you're wearing a mask, you can still see the smile. It's, yeah. So smile. I don't know why I'm ranting on like this now. I'm wishing the best to everyone in these times, and yeah, keep swimming.